Hi, Tom. My
Hey,
first
thanks for having me, Miranda.
My pleasure. How's everything in the McGuire household today? Oh,
Can you hear me okay? I had,
yeah.
okay. How's everything going here? A little chaotic since Ronan is home for daycare due to a COVID exposure, and we have two dogs while both my wife and I attempt to work. So not ideal, but we're powering through.
Thank you for juggling. We appreciate it, and we understand the reality. I know a lot of us are dealing with the same. So David will go ahead and give you sharing privileges, and we're really excited to hear about your journey into this community so far.
Yeah, so first off, thanks for having me and giving me some time, excuse me, to share our story. So my name's Tom McGuire. My wife's name is Stephanie McGuire, and we're both the parents of Ronan McGuire, who just turned 7 months old. He was born June 9th of 2021. So we live right outside of Boston, south of Boston in Quincy, Massachusetts. So you can see, this was Ronan about a month ago before we went to a Christmas party. These are our dogs here. Buddy, he's a Wheaton Terrier. And then we have Birdie. She's a little crazy. She's a pandemic puppy. We decided to get pregnant and get a puppy peak pandemic, which, we're starting to think was probably not the smartest thing in the world. And here's us on vacation. Again, crazy experience. We went to Nantucket when Ronan was about 2 months old with the whole family and the dogs. So that's my wife with me in those pictures with Ronan. So to kind of give some background, I think I touched on it a little bit. My wife and I kind of went through a pregnancy journey, had some difficulty getting pregnant, ended up needing some assistance and going through fertility, and ended up getting pregnant through IUI. And this was, kind of stressful in itself because it was peak pandemic too. So right when we started to get engaged with our fertility doctors, there was restrictions to how to go about the process and how to get to the hospital and whatnot. But ultimately, it worked out well for us. I think it was both rounds we were able to get pregnant, and ultimately, Ronan was, brought to the world through this process, which was a miracle in itself. So that being said, again, peak pandemic, being pregnant, not ideal. I wasn't able to attend pretty much any of the appointments with my wife, which again created some stress and whatnot. But leading up to it, I think we were all a little nervous, being our first kid, not knowing what to expect, but there was a lot of excitement as well. And after a long, intense labor, my wife ended up having a C-section and bringing Ronan to the world after about 25 hours of labor. So, I mean, I can only explain the emotions, being a first-time dad, meeting him for the first time. It was just an absolutely wild experience, which I'm sure each one of you guys have experienced. But, people always told me, friends and whatnot, but I think experience it myself, is really just the amount of emotions and excitement going through my body. It's a time I'll never forget. And just looking at him right now, it's crazy how much you come to love somebody so small and so precious. So that's kind of the beginning of our story. And with that, I can kind of lead to, how we got the news of him getting ALD. So, everything was going just great. We had him home for about 3 weeks. Maybe I'm being a little naive saying everything was going great. I think we were all adjusting, trying to learn from one another between understanding what his cries meant, getting him to sleep, first time changing a diaper in my life. So we're all learning from one another. And about 3 weeks in, we had a missed call from our pediatrician, who actually wasn't our real pediatrician because our pediatrician was on vacation. And it was like a 5 o'clock on a Thursday. And automatically, I think both my wife and I kind of got a pit in our stomach thinking, getting a call this late, something must be wrong. So we called him back, and he luckily, stayed a little late to share the news with us. Share the news with with us. And to be quite honest, from my initial, I mean, I was very confused. I think the pediatrician himself was his first time experiencing it. So I think he was a little nervous sharing the news with us himself. So my emotions, confusion, I was in disbelief, a lot of denial. Like, to me, I was thinking the newborn screening must be wrong. There's no way that, my son could be impacted. Like, he looks so perfect. So I basically I wasn't accepting the news from my point of view. Now my wife was the exact opposite. She immediately knew it was something serious. Knew it was something that, something was wrong with him and that he was going to need, care and our help immediately. And I think on top of that, just from an emotion standpoint, she felt, being the carrier of this genetic disease, felt a lot of guilt and sadness. Not only felt guilty for giving it to Ronan, but felt guilty that she was like letting me down. And those first few days were quite rough. Just kind of understanding what the heck was going on, right? Kind of dealing with a little depression. Nothing really was bringing joy, but still having a month old right next to you that needed you. And obviously they tell you don't Google, which I think everyone knows the first thing you do is go ahead and Google. And when you do that, it brings up questions, and it looks like, your son just got diagnosed with a terminal illness and he's going to have a short time and on Earth. So, the fears of losing him become almost too real. And you just overburdened with a lot of questions, and at the time, our pediatrician couldn't really answer because he knew such little about this genetic disease. So that being said, I think that took a week or a few days to a week to really kind of understand everything and what was going on. And, I kind of have a little bit of a personal story around like going through something like this with my father. He passed away in 2016 due to a terminal illness that I didn't really know much about myself. And it's called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, which is scarring of the lung tissue. And they don't really know how it happens, but over time, you basically lose lung function. And he passed away after battling it for 3 to 4 years. So I come from an Irish Catholic family where we're not really great at expressing and sharing our emotions. We kind of store it deep down, fall into that disbelief and denial. If we don't admit that it's there, it's all going to go away. And so I don't think I didn't realize that I didn't handle my dad's death until after the fact, that I had all these emotions stored up, and, had an impact on personal relationships. So after this happening to Ronan, it's almost like a second chance, like understanding what I did wrong with my dad. I told myself that I'm not going to put myself in that situation again. I'm going to accept what this is, and I'm going to try to be as positive and the best dad possible to him, to show a strong support system, not only to him, but to my wife and the extended family. So I'm not sure if second chance is the right word, but, dealing with my dad's loss, I feel like put me in better position to handle this type of news, based on experience something tragic and losing a close family member like that. So after kind of that, kind of thinking more positive outlook, okay, you dealt with the why, you had the opportunity to kind of grieve a little bit. Now it's okay, tie your bootstraps tight, and we got to figure out what the heck's going on so we can support the little guy. And luckily, right outside of Boston, we were able to talk to Dr. Eichler almost immediately. And that was just such a huge blessing, because he just reassured us, and he was able to make himself available to say, this isn't a death sentence. We know a lot about this. He's going to be just fine. And just like the confidence that he spoke and shared with us was just, so amazing, really. It's just like, it was like an angel that flew in and was able to talk to us, right? Just having that level of comfort. And it was really, it just, turned everything around for my wife and I, and gave us a more positive outlook. My wife is, so educated on what ALD is now. And I'm not even going to attempt, I just say ALD because you don't even want to hear me try to attempt some of the terminology. So I let her do all the speaking with friends and family. So after kind of the why, we looked at, okay, how did it happen to us? Understand introduction to medical resources, like I said, and understand what the genetic and newborn screening results meant. And understand, how my wife was a carrier, understand who else could be impacted. And that in itself took a lot of, education and getting exposed to various resources to understand, because what's crazy about it is after his initial newborn screening, he got tested again and he fell within normal range. So, that's how close we were to maybe never finding out about this in itself, which is pretty wild. So, after kind of the how, we're focusing more today, like what's next for him, under meeting his medical resources. And again, I feel like we are one of the lucky ones, knowing that he has it, but also being so close to some of the best, medical facilities in the world, with MGH only, 10 minutes away. So I think, short and long-term understanding, what type of doctor's appointments he has. And that in itself is a little bit overwhelming. But everyone that we've dealt with, from MGH to our pediatrician, has been so supportive to help us coordinate resources, understand what the future holds for the next 12 years or so, for the beginning half of this journey. Coordinating the doctor's appointments. My wife's been a rock star, as well as the support the hospital and pediatrician office has given her. And I think what's been cool too is, connecting with the community in itself, understanding that we're not in it alone. And, I see people sharing their stories, and it's really incredible. And I think, having someone that's experiencing exactly what you are makes it a little bit easier, right? And then ultimately, I think at first ALD goes through your mind like 24/7, and what you can do. And, it's something, it's really hard to get those thoughts out of your mind. But ultimately, as time has passed, I just look at it, I just want him to have the most normal childhood as possible. And I need to focus on being a dad, right? And it's like, I think thinking about it 24/7 does nobody really any good. And I think I'm just looking at it like, okay, when's his next doctor's appointment? And when's his next MRI? And sure, there's going to be some stress and anxiety when that date comes, but I kind of take the approach is that I'm not going to let the genetic disease really define us as a family or him. I want to make sure that I'm still available to him so he can go about his normal life, and we can kind of just enjoy the ride of being new parents as well. So then kind of moving to my last kind of slide, and again, I'm still new to this, but parents that may be on that might just get the news themselves, or existing parents, kind of my advice and outlook is kind of simple, right? One, stay positive, which isn't always easy. It's challenging for me as well. But in my work life, there's about 12 people that report up to me. And I think, as a parent and looking at it as a leader and a manager in my work life, there's some things that that overlap one another, that you can take from business world to your personal world and vice versa. And to me, what always makes a good leader is kind of leading by example and setting the tone for the team, right? They pick up on your energy. And I think the same is true with being a parent, right? And my wife and I, even sometimes when you're bickering about something, I feel like he can pick up on the energy, right? So if we stay positive and we have a positive outlook, then he's not going to be scared. And so that's kind of the attitude that I'm taking, is trying to you know, not be as anxious, because I don't want him to pick up on the anxiety. I want him to go, and like what Dr. Eichler said to us really stuck. It's like, you know, you go to the doctors, you go to the dentist every 6 months, just look at it as that. And so, yeah, it's going to take some time to get him normal, like for him to understand this is just part of his journey, is a little different than maybe his friends and his peers. But if we can just normalize it and stay positive and, you know, be supportive, then it's going to trickle down to him and he'll pick up on that energy. And then the second thing, you know, is, I said it earlier, is I think we, you know, I'm the lucky one, right? That we were able to get exposure and know that he has this, so we can do everything possible to make sure that he has the care that he needs. Right. And I know there's been so many families that haven't had the luxury of newborn screening. So, you know, me being one of the lucky ones, I want to continue to work with the community and you guys to that every state and every newborn screening accounts for this. And then the next step is, you know, the genetic testing, right? There's so many, what's so crazy to me and my wife as we learn more about this, the statistics are only aligned to people that we know that have ALD. You know, how many kids are getting misdiagnosed, but more so adulthood. There's people walking around with it that have no idea. There's people that are spreading it that have no idea. And we were actually, you know, kind of a victim of that ourselves, you know, going through fertility treatment. You know, we did the genetic testing and nothing came back that my wife had this. And it's because the lab that we went through, they're telling us, didn't have, you know, this data registered in the genetic testing or whatever it may be. We're still learning. So it's like, well, you know, if we knew this, we could have prevented it. It is what it is now, but how can we spread awareness to not only spread the newborn screening, but make genetic testing more available to understand who has it, make sure it's not getting misdiagnosed. Because I think as time goes on, you know, there's a lot of people out there that have it that have no idea. You know, they're spreading it and pushing it down to their children, and you know, they have to experience all this guilt and sadness that could be preventable. So I know we're a long way to go, but hopefully, you know, my voice and working with you guys and the rest of the community, we can continue to push that forward. And then the last thing, right, is to me, I just look at, you know, embracing the community. It's so nice to know that you're not alone. Because oftentimes I think it felt very lonely getting that news at first, right? And it is very difficult sometimes to hear the stories on the ALD website and whatnot, and to hear some of the stress mothers and fathers are going through. But just to get that support system in play and people that can speak the same language that you're speaking and really understand what you're going through, I think was very helpful early on, and it still is helpful. So that's kind of my outlook, my story, and you know, kind of my advice to maybe some newer parents that just started on this journey. You know, and I'm still new myself, so we're all learning. We're all learning together. I know I have a few extra minutes. Happy to take any questions that people may have as well.
Thank you so much, Tom. You know, it really makes me think about everything I went through at that point, and then you had to deal with COVID on top of it. And I just can't imagine. And the
Yeah.
people experiencing this diagnosis during this pandemic, it's hard.
Yeah, it was not easy. I think, you know, after he was born, there was like that small spot there that we thought COVID was behind us. The biggest challenge has just been, you know, coordinating the doctor's appointments and, you know, only one of us being able to go in, or splitting responsibilities. And it's difficult just not having the whole family together. So hopefully the pandemic is getting closer to being behind us and we can get everyone together and get back to the new normal eventually, which who knows when will happen, but that will be a little bit easier.
Yeah, I know we're all hoping for that. I did have a question. When you first started talking about your journey, you talked about you and your wife kind of being at different points of acceptance. And I completely relate to that because my husband and I were the same way. Within 5 minutes of me getting the phone call from the pediatrician, I had already, I think, jumped ahead to processing the possibility of losing my son. And my husband was just like you. He said, but we still have to go in. We have to confirm this. It's probably nothing. But just in speaking with you these last few months, I can tell what a great team you and your wife are. So maybe you could talk about how you guys walk through that as a couple, because this has come up a lot in our conversations too about the psychological impact of this disease and trying to help other parents. So how did you guys work through that?
Yeah, I mean, what you just described is exactly what we went through, right? I think I talked about how much we loved him when he was first born, and it's crazy. Like, I think after we got this news, it's almost like we loved him more, if that's even possible, because it's like it became like the idea that he could be taking from us became reality. And I think my wife thought like that she could um possibly lose him, which was, giving her nightmares. And, I think there was, to your point, I thought a little bit like your husband, like, one, like this, something has to be wrong. There's no way he has that. Right. So I wanted to learn more. And I wasn't ready to hit the panic button quite yet. And then just trying to navigate that through with one another was certainly challenging. But I think, you know, both of us, going through therapy and understanding kind of how to process our emotions helped. And one thing piece of advice is, like, everyone, there's no right way to handle it, right? Like, you have to give everyone space. Everyone is gonna process this and deal with it kind of differently. But the important thing is to be on the same team, right? And to know that you're one core family that is going to help each other get through it. And focus on what you can control, right? And that's the biggest thing, right? You can keep yourself up at night if you're thinking worst case scenario with everything. You can only take it one day at a time. It's good to know what could potentially happen, but focus on your individual situation and what you need to do to best support your family, right? You can't, as difficult as it is, what we just, we can't compare your situation to other families. It's good to know what they're going through, but you can't, like, hit the panic button with every little story you hit and think that it's only a matter of time before your world explodes. So I just try to take it day by day, focus on what we can control. And with his MRI comes, we'll deal with it that day. We'll dissect the results the following day, right? And I think that's the approach that we've come to take together as a team and two parents looking for the best interests of our son.
It makes a lot of sense. I think that's a good approach. Are there any other questions for Tom? We had another dad chime in the chat. Thanks, Tom. As a father that recently found out our 5-year-old son has ALD, I experienced many of these same emotions. My newborn daughter is a carrier, which is how we found out. Wish you the best in your journey.
Yeah, it's crazy. No, I appreciate that. And, like I said, it's difficult to dissect or digest this information, right? You feel like your world kind of just turned upside down. But just knowing your son has it and your daughter is a carrier, you're already 10 steps ahead of most people, right? You're going to ensure that he has the care, and then you're going to put her in position for her future, that she can be aware of it and potentially save future lives and prevent it from getting passed down. So it's a lot. It's a mixed emotions, right? Because you're saying, why me, but at the same time you're almost like appreciative that you're in a situation where what your son has and daughter has, and what you can do to potentially help them. And that's the best place to be in as a parent.
Agreed. Tom, thank you so much again, especially with all you guys have going on today.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for accepting us into the community with open arms. And I know there's other folks that have done a lot more than we have up to this to just make newborn screening available. So we certainly appreciate it. And hopefully we can continue to help spread awareness and help future families down the road.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you.